Hello, hello, and welcome to Spirituality Gone Wild. I am Debbie G, and I am here with the extraordinary TJ Woodward. Welcome, TJ.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm so grateful. I love our conversations, and I'm really happy to be here with everyone watching.
I'm super excited to be here too. I was going to play a song just now and realized we started late, and so forgive that little delay. And decided let's just jump right into it. Today's conversation is going to be all around everyday compassion. This is going to be good, TJ. So every Monday, TJ and I chat, and I say, "Hey, TJ, what's the topic?" And he throws one at me. So this one I'm loving. So I'm just going to let you dive right into it, darling, and let's talk about what everyday compassion means to you.
Thank you. It's, as I was reflecting on or being with a great topic for this evening, I was thinking about a chapter in my first book, Conscious Being, titled Everyday Compassion, and looking at the possibility that we can have compassion no matter what, no matter what's happening in our world, in our life, in our relationships. And, we live in a culture where we're so deeply entrenched in the ideas of good and bad and right and wrong that someone might not be able to understand. And I certainly didn't understand this earlier in my evolution, I'll put it that way, that I could actually bring compassion into any situation and move beyond the paradigm of good and bad and right and wrong. And there are so many stories I could tell about that, but I think that is at least a way to start to really ask the question for anyone who's watching right now: is it possible to bring compassion into every situation in your life? And what might that create? And then how do we do it? How do we live as the frequency of compassion in the world? Because it sure does seem that that's what's wanted and needed right now in our culture and in our time.
I absolutely love that, and I agree 150%. So for our viewing audience, I want you to sit back and really just digest the question. And do you believe this is possible? And I believe it's possible 100%. But how do you do it? That's the big key. Compassion.
Yeah. Well, I think,
Yeah.
You and I talk about this often, that it always starts within.
Yeah.
Right. So I can't have compassion for someone else if I don't have compassion for myself. And as a matter of fact, I think we did a show recently called You Can Either Judge or You Can Love. And we explored the topic that judgment of others is really just a projection of the judgment we have about ourselves, but only 100% of the time.
Well, wait a minute. What about that? Oh, yeah, that is 100%.
That's right.
I mean, seriously, it truly is. I'm going to tell you, I had an experience that was interesting. I was in Marshall's, which is just a regular, I like Marshall's. And I was in line. And this pandemic, I haven't been out a ton, but lately I kind of went out a little bit more than usual. So here's what happened. There was a lady and her daughter, and then another lady. The other lady turns around, and I kid you not, looks at the mother and the daughter and says, "Get back."
Oh, wow.
Now, I live in Huntington Beach, okay? Not to say that if you live somewhere else, that it might not be, but it's not LA, okay? It's not like it's Los Angeles. And even in Los Angeles, it would have shocked me. The daughter looks so heartbroken. It was sad. And my heart just broke. And I just kind of looked at them and smiled and said, can't control it when people project their days upon you. Fear is a yucky thing. Fear is such a yucky place to be in. Can you imagine how much fear she must be in to have to be rude? And I said this where she could hear me, and I looked at her like, you're talking, she did this and there's a child there. I was like, I wanted to judge her. I want to be honest with you. I really did. I wanted to judge her, and I wanted to, but then I thought about it, and this is where the compassion every day comes in. My compassionate heart stepped in and said, damn, she must be so scared. She must be so afraid to act that way. And that's really what it came down to. So right now with this happening, that was an experience where the only thing I could do was watch my reaction and watch my responses from myself. But then also I wanted um, to let the other, like, just show compassion to both sides,
Right.
even though the one I did want to judge. I mean, just truthfully, anybody else out there ever have an experience you'd rather just judge it and say, well, she's a bitch, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and it might be, and I think I told this story the last time about my first spiritual teacher, Mary Helen Brownell, and an experience that changed my life. So
Yeah.
you can go back and watch. I think it was in our previous show, but essentially, there was a moment where there was a lot of judgment being put toward a person, and my beloved Mary Helen, who was my first mentor and teacher. This was many, many years ago in the early '90s. Stood up and walked over to the person that people were judging and just really surrounded her with so much love and compassion.
Mm.
And it was at that moment that I started to ask myself the question, is compassion a choice? Do I have a choice to show up being loving and being compassionate? And then, quite frankly, just to be transparent, is that the right thing? I think I was in a little bit more of the right wrong paradigm, because I had this idea that if I just had compassion for everyone, I was going to allow bad behavior to show up. But what I have discovered over the years, and what Mary Helen demonstrated so beautifully, is that judgment actually creates separation, and it creates more of what created the issue in the first place. And
Mm.
so, Debbie, I appreciate what you're saying, because my mind is always judging. I thought there would be a moment my mind would reach this place where it was always just open and loving. Let me put it this way, it's more open and loving than it's ever been, but I also have moments where I notice the judgment coming in. Now, the key there is notice, and that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that is
The,
what I'm saying for sure.
yeah, because that's a key point, right? If I have to first notice I'm doing it, and then what you also said is important, I need to check in with what I'm actually experiencing rather than projecting it. That's the important
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah, it's huge. And if anybody needs help with, if you're in a situation and you experience that, my natural humanness wanted to protect the mom and her daughter,
Right.
and like a mama bear just come up like, don't talk to them like that. That's not nice. But instead, it was more like that choice came up, to be compassionate and judge, or to be judgmental and yucky. And if I had been judgy, can you imagine if I had done that? What it would have escalated, and then I would have created a whole drama scene, and it would have started with me.
Right.
It would have absolutely started with me, because I take responsibility for that. But in that responsibility was the choice to be compassionate, and I chose compassion over being rude back, or because I mean, honestly, it didn't have anything to do with me, but but in life, have you ever seen something and you kind of want to defend people sometimes, just because okay, I know that right or wrong thing's not there. It just doesn't feel good to watch somebody get verbally attacked.
Yeah, I mean, I think this pandemic for me has brought up so many opportunities to notice where I feel sad. I see people in an immense amount of fear. And of course, we see on social media people suddenly becoming the experts on just about everything, and becoming highly opinionated, and that's part of, people say, well, isn't that part of the human experience? Yes, but then we have a choice, right? Do I want to be that? Do I want to think that I am my opinions? Or do I want to become more curious, right? So fear, as you said, is an activator of all kinds of crazy behavior. And we see that. Sometimes I think what's missing in this conversation is people maybe they hear what you and I are saying is, well, just don't have any more opinions, or just let whatever happens. Like, they go into like we're saying be a doormat for people. Not at all. What we're actually saying is it's far more empowering to actually be curious rather than opinionated. And then we begin to change the emotional climate of the planet Earth and of the world, because that's how change actually happens. It starts within. I start to change the way I show up in the world, and then all of a sudden my world is different, and that's a ripple effect, and that goes any different way. If I start opinionating, that's a ripple effect as well. And we're just living in interesting times around that. I feel like we're at this really interesting point of seeing ourselves in a really different way. And I'm holding, I was talking to our common friend Denise earlier, and we were talking about this being a profound opportunity for a shift in consciousness right now. 2020 is, what if 2020 is the best year of our entire lives? Because maybe we've been asking for transformation, but we're like, oh wait, I didn't want it to feel like this.
Boom. You guys, can you imagine? All right, now we're stretching it. We're stretching it. You're stretching it there, TJ. The 2020, rather than deemed the most horrific year we've ever known, but to be the biggest opportunity and the best year we ever had. I want to just take a gander that I'm in the best year I've ever had moment.
Yeah.
I know that all sounds crazy, but I was literally going through some content, loading up our website. And as I'm doing this, I am seeing myself in different places along last year. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. The gratitude I have right now in this moment to just be where I'm at. And it's all happened in 2020. It all happened because of this pandemic. So I know that sounds nuts, but it depends on your perception. My perception has been this is an opportunity to do things I haven't been doing. One of them was step forward and get this website up and going. Thank you, Christopher, my son. But yeah, I have to, and we have some people who agree. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Dawn.
I love that. Thank you so much. So yeah, it's super exciting when you look at what possibilities are there. And the fact is that when you act compassionately in everyday life, when you make those choices, would you say, TJ, that we get more opportunities pop up?
Well, yeah, and that's the key, right? So what I'm not saying is 2020 is the best year ever because it's 2020 that's the best year ever. What I'm saying is, what if I could decide that there's some immensely wonderful things that are coming from this? In other words, it's not like 2020 came in as a curse or a blessing. It's that I always have an opportunity to look at every situation through the lens of a curse or a blessing. And it doesn't mean we minimize the pain. I mean, I have spent a lot of time honoring and nurturing my sadness. Like that story that Debbie, that you shared. I mean, it does break my heart. It breaks my heart to hear that, especially for a child to be told that. I remember, earlier on in the pandemic, we walked into a store and we all had our masks on, but this woman literally jumped and started screaming and told the person at the front door, you need to get people out of the way so I can, and my heart broke with that kind of fear.
Yeah.
And it's not, the human mind wants to say, well, it is scary because there's all this stuff happening. And we honor that, but every moment is a choice. And that's why I like the term everyday compassion. In every day, no matter what is happening, we can show up with compassion and curiosity rather than judgment. And it is a moment-to-moment choice. And sometimes it's easy, right? Like it's easy when I'm with someone I love and I'm with my new doggy and we're having fun. But there are other moments too. And those might be an even bigger opportunity when I notice myself going into judgment. Oh, look, here's an opportunity.
It is. So what you did is you just said, okay, so now there's no way he's debunking it all. So you guys just pay attention. Everything's an opportunity. There's in the world of no right and wrong. And it's not that there isn't, a lot of people go, well, wait a minute, but what if this and this and this? Because they want to go to the extremes,
Right.
But actually, just in our everyday thing, the idea is that you're allowing somebody else to be right within their own opinion or their own perspective. Like you said, there's a lot of people out there with a whole lot of opinions. And you know what they say about that, right? Okay. If y'all don't know what they say about that, Google it. What do they say about opinions? And it'll tell you it has something to do with a bow tie. Anyway. the point is, yeah. So now what we're doing now is encouraging you to think about things a little bit differently. So think about your day to day, and as you've went through it, who out there can tell me about what kind of compassionate experiences that you've had happen in the last, let's say, 72 hours? And who out there could looks at it as an opportunity to maybe, for me, the opportunity would be to do it a little bit better, maybe do it a little bit different. Well, then better is no better, wrong. I mean, look at that. I just want to judge everything instantly, TJ. I
Well,
mean, seriously.
it's interesting because I'm thinking back to when I wrote my first book. I wrote about a challenge that I offered myself with my friend John. We agreed, we were having lunch one day, and we agreed to see if we could go 30 days without an opinion. And I realized I could go about 30 minutes without one. And I didn't want to go into a judgment of my opinion. But what I did was I started becoming curious about what was getting created energetically when I had so many opinions. And again, the mind is opinionating, right? Oh, how could she do that? Why did he say that? Or an opinion of myself. Now, when people watching this might say, well, but I do have opinions about what's happening politically, and I do want to follow my heart, and there are horrible things happening I need to speak to. So I'm not debating any of that. I'm asking a very simple question. What gets created when I have an opinion versus what gets created when I become curious about another person's point of view? And yes, people bring up the extremes. People will say, what about Hitler? What about the Holocaust? What about racism? I understand that there are things that we hold to be good and bad. I'm not really wanting to be in that debate because that would be more opinions. What we want to do is become curious, because like let's look at racism, for example. My opinionating about it actually was preventing me from having accountability about it. So I'm going to say that again. My opinionating about it was preventing me from having some accountability. Because, see, I grew up thinking, well, I don't have any racism. That's not me. I grew up in a family that really taught me to honor different people. I'm married to a person of mixed race. How could I? So I had the narrative, right? But when a lot of this stuff came to the surface recently, I noticed that I was opinionating about people instead of saying, oh, how can I be part of the shift?
Yeah.
I can't be part of
Uh-oh.
Are we back?
We're back. I think
that must have been important because it just knocked something out in the energy field.
It just went poof. I mean, it just froze in time.
Yeah.
Let's repeat that, if you will.
Yeah. When a lot of stuff over the last few weeks and months have come up about race in our country, I noticed that I was going into judgment about people. And what I wanted to do instead, or what I realized, was my judgment was preventing me from really looking at what my part was, right? So it's easier in some ways to judge someone else and how could they do that and how could they say that, rather than saying, wow, what have I done to contribute this? And rather than going into my knee-jerk reaction of like, well, I never have a racist thought, recognize that, being born in this time in our culture, there's no way I couldn't have absorbed some of it. So rather than finger pointing, I wanted to become aware of if I could take a look at myself without judgment. And I discovered that there were all kinds of subtle and some not so subtle things where I had some deep programming from my family systems, from schools, from the media. I don't think any of us can escape that. And I think that, for me, and I'm only speaking for me, it takes courage for me to admit it, because I would much rather say I'm a good person. And because I'm such a good person, I can finger point to those people that are bad people. But that's what creates the division in our world. And we never shift consciousness, not really until we pause, become accountable through the lens of self-compassion. And as I can have compassion for me, I can have compassion for you. And then I can become curious about how I can be part of making a difference rather than being a part of blaming others for what's happening.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. That
Thank
was some
you,
good
Don.
stuff. That was just those are some words that you can all just rewind this after we're done and re-listen to, because those are some things that you want to take notes on. And the reason I say you want to take notes is that in order to make the change, you have to start doing something every day, right? So think about this. If you could just focus on not having an opinion, could you imagine? I want to see, I'm going to put myself through this test and go through not having an opinion and see what that looks like, and bringing more awareness to being everyday compassionate. And this is great. I need to be reminded that compassion is a choice that I get to make every day. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah. And Debbie, what you're saying, because the challenge, what I discovered for myself, and I don't know what it would be for anyone else, it wasn't so much about not having the opinion. It was about noticing what showed up when I wasn't opinionating. Right. And what I realized for myself is that I was deflecting because it was painful for me to acknowledge the feelings, the energy, the points of view. And I was in a place where it was much easier to point outward. And can you imagine a world where even for the next hour, each of us committed to doing this? What would change? And I've had people say, well, that's really Pollyanna. But guess what? Consciousness works that way. If we're willing to take a look, a meme that I love is, America doesn't need to build a wall. We need to build a mirror and take a look in it. And that's true for me.
True for me. I'm going to own that right there. I'm going to just, yep. Absolutely. There comes many points and times in my life where I can think of when I've looked in the mirror. And now I'm looking in the mirror and appreciating and loving who I see. But I remember those times of looking in the mirror and feeling like, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, blah, 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 blah. The negative self-talk that comes in. And then I also, that deflection of those parts of me that were insecure, those parts of me that were feeling unlovable. Well, those turned into total, me being, not nice to somebody, not practicing compassion. As a matter of fact, no, it just turned into not only opinionated, but there was anger in there sometimes, and there's been all kinds of those emotions that sit right within our little ego. Our ego is just, I'm going to tell you what's up. And it's just, if you feel it up in your body, like, pay attention to your body. If you want to know if you're in compassion or not, pay attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that's important about this too is, I know, Debbie, you and I have talked about this before, and what we know now, and on so many different points of view are letting us know this. I'm thinking of Joe Dispenza right now, that when we're holding on to this, we're creating literal disease in our body. And here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and I see so much opinionating and I see so much fear, and that fear of restriction is actually making us more susceptible. So being in curiosity and choosing compassion on a moment-to-moment basis actually boosts our immune system. It boosts and elevates that part of ourselves that always is healing. My friend Amy spoke yesterday at a spiritual center, and she said, we don't need to seek healing, but only allow wholeness. And I just love that.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Thank you, Amy, whoever you are. I love you.
Amy Van Lang. Yeah, you can check out her talk on Facebook. It was just really, really brilliant.
Oh, that sounds absolutely amazing. I am like so excited about this topic though, because compassion is our love. It's our heart conscious space. Mind, you brought up Joe Dispenza, so we can talk mind and heart coherence,
Yeah,
you know, getting our thoughts in alignment with our heart, and having them in coherence. I mean, that's the beauty. That's when magic happens. And my trick for that, honestly, is gratitude.
yeah.
I have grateful behind me, or there it is behind me, um, for a reason, because I mindfully make choices every day to be in gratitude. So even before I can get cranky with somebody and not exercise compassion and empathy, I only have to think about how am I grateful that I'm here? How am I grateful that I'm even experiencing being where I'm at the store with whatever. I have to look at my own life and I exercise this gratitude of I wouldn't be here if
Yeah,
possibly that might be one of them. I wouldn't be here if, uh, you know, what's coming to me right now is if you ever wanted a job, you wanted that new job, you don't like the job you're in, and you just know that if you get this other job, that's what's going to do it and make you happy in your life. But you're also like, I just, you're laser focused. You want the job, you get the job, you're stoked, you're telling everybody, oh my God, I'm starting right now. And you're putting it out there to everybody. But 6 months down the line, you're bitching, whining, complaining, and seriously like, and I hate my boss. My boss is an asshole, and blah, blah, blah. And here's the deal. We forget to be grateful for where we were. You're making $10 more in an hour. You're still having the same issues with this company that you were with the other one. Where do you think that the common denominator is?
right.
The mirror that we all need rather than, we just need a mirror. But looking at the common denominator is you. So maybe it isn't the job that's so bad, and maybe it isn't the other people that are so bad, and maybe it really does start with self. At least in my world, it does. But the gratitude moment, if you forget to be grateful for where you were, to how you got to where you are, then your life may not be projecting one that you think is very good because you've forgotten where you came from.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as you were speaking, two things came to mind. One is a phrase that I love, and that is, if you're not grateful for what you have, what makes you think you'll be grateful when you get more? Right? Because a lot of us are like, oh, I want more. I want more money. I want more love. I want more relationships. And if I'm not happy now, I'm just going to have more of plenty of things to make me unhappy. But I want to say a word of something that's really important. What we're not talking about, Debbie and I are not talking about shifting the blame and judgment from other people to ourselves, because that's going to keep us stuck too. Um, when when I wrote my book, Conscious Being, we're about to re-release it, so it's really fresh in my mind. But I have a chapter called Everyday Compassion, and it is a dedication to my first teacher, Mary Helen. And I reflected on what were the key spiritual principles she taught me through her example. And I came up with Mary Helen's 7 spiritual principles. And one of them was everybody is perfect just as they are. And I would go to her with my judgment and my frustration, and she was so kind and compassionate to me. She never said, well, what needs to be fixed within you? Like, she never said something like that. She said, well, if you had their life, you would be just like them. And then I started thinking, God, I don't know what everyone's gone through. And then what happened from that openness is I realized that it really wasn't about what they were doing. It was more about my judgments. And then I realized too that we all have strategies based on these core wounds, these core false beliefs that you were talking about. And, if someone's acting really arrogant and pompous, first of all, do I act that way? Absolutely. I've acted that way. Right. So I relate to it first. And maybe that's that empathy and that compassion. And then I can say, I wonder what's underneath that, right? That person is longing for love and connection, there's probably some kind of wound, and the strategy is to, act like we know it all. Now, I'm talking 100% about myself. That was my journey, right? I felt like I was unworthy. So my solution was to look really good on the outside and make people think I was like perfect and I could never make mistakes. And so when I saw that in others, I judged it because I hadn't healed that within myself. But it's important to say, again, it's not about taking the judgment from them and moving it toward ourselves. It's being curious about them, being curious about me. And I often will ask myself the question, what is the request here? Of Course in Miracles says everything is everything is love or a request for love. And that to me has been life-changing. I wonder what the request for love is in this behavior.
That is beautiful. What is the request for love in this behavior? So if you're having a hard time being compassionate with some things, that's a really great question to ask yourself, and ask yourself for you, like being compassionate for yourself, Okay, I'll give you guys one. So, TJ.
Yes.
Thursday, I was eating my granddaughter's goldfish and I broke a tooth. In the back, it was a molar. Now, I want to tell you all, listen, I had perfect teeth until I was 49 years old and I'm 52 now. And I had radiation, and so it really does affect your mouth, okay? Especially because I had it up here. I have been putting off this thing for I don't know how long to go to the dentist because I just have. And anyway, so it broke and I had to go. But I had to get really compassionate with myself because I was kicking myself in the butt for procrastinating about my teeth. The COVID thing happened. That's bull. Actually, it could have been anything that stopped me. I was just obviously not going. So, because it hasn't even been long enough in COVID for a cavity to have done that much damage. So, I'd be lying if I said that was the case. But I had to really give myself extra compassion because I was really getting down on myself for not handling business, and not taking care of me and not putting myself as a priority. Well, I had to really think about that and remember what I've been through, what this last year has been, because it's been huge, and not giving myself excuses, but rather giving myself compassion for doing the best I can with what I've got, because we are just perfect as we are. Just as she said, we are perfect as we are. And so the fact is that this experience for me right now was one that I got to see, hey, it's much better when you just take care of it ahead of time or when you're just on point with it. But if you're not, that's okay too. It's perfect the way it is, broken tooth and all.
Yeah. And then we, I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about blame being a very low frequency. And if I can shift out of, judging the blame, right? So I'm not saying blame is a low frequency, so we're bad if we have it. I'm saying, I notice I'm in blame frequency. That's a lower frequency. And today I choose, because I can witness that, and I realize, I have a choice to catch that and move into a different frequency. Because to me, it becomes profoundly simple. What does it create? I always ask, what does it create? What does blame create? Well, it creates division, it creates separation, it creates good, bad, right, wrong paradigm. I don't really watch the news anymore, but I did watch a little bit of both the conventions. We're in a political time, and I realized the word that I heard the most, and it wasn't from one side, it was from both was fight. We're fighting the wrong, we're fighting the right. And this isn't about politics, but it's about recognizing that we're in blame and division. It just creates more. So what would it take for us to have a powerful shift in our consciousness? And that's a question that I'm inviting us to live in. I'm not going to answer that. First of all, I don't know completely, but I do love being in that question.
I think that's brilliant. And I love this. I mean, this is just, this show today has given me a boost that I needed. And it's so good to connect when you can really and really get some juicy things that feed your soul. Anybody out there feel like that TJ's been feeding your soul today? What I do see is this, and thank you, Oliver. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Oliver.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm inviting us because let's look at something in a tangible way. Right now in American politics, we have these narratives that we're so separate and that we're polarized, and it's so easy to go into the they're right, they're wrong. But the reality is, only 26% of Americans voted for our president. 26% of registered voters.
Mm.
And so if you're not happy, because whether wherever you fall on the political spectrum, but if you're not happy with who's in office, rather than fighting against that and the people that voted for him, what if you start standing for, right? Standing for, like, rather than fighting against racism, what if I stand for equality? What if I stand for connection? What if I stand for compassion, understanding? What if what I get to do is notice if I have a reaction, notice if I have resistance, and instead listen to someone? Listen to a person's experience, really be open, going back to, and I don't know if I said this with you on this show or if it was my conversation with Denise, but again, Course in Miracles, one of the key principles is all I know is not all there is to know. And I say, oh, I don't know. And I don't know holds so much power. Oh, I can be curious. I can be open. And then what would it create if I quit fighting against and started standing for love, standing for equality, standing for justice? It's a game changer.
It is a full-blown game changer. So imagine that, you guys. Imagine that. I love and they're really, I mean, thank you, Dawn. Just absolutely. I think that's just incredible. For everybody that's watching right now, you'll see right here, it says tjwoodward.com. What I want to do is invite you to go over to tjwoodward.com and to check out his courses that are available. I mean, how many courses do you have available now?
Well, it's interesting. I think there are 2 that are live and 3 more that are going to go live in the next couple of months. So right now, Conscious Recovery for Individuals is the course that I just think it's life-changing. It's really a culmination of my own life experience. Whether you're a person who has had an addiction or not, this is really about getting in touch with our original perfection and recognizing how we can start to unlearn some of the, beliefs and ideas that have kept us in that judgment. And how do we step into a life of more love and compassion?
So what you do is you go to tjwoodward.com and you take the course, which would be really awesome for you to do. You can also check out TJ on the Conscious Recovery Facebook page because he has all kinds of great shows happening all of the time. And also on wholehearted.org. Wholehearted.org. I can bring that up. And in that particular channel, that has, don't you have one with Mark Ledholm coming up?
Yeah, actually, it just released. It came out on Saturday. So I'm a guest on the Mark Lundholm show. It's on YouTube right now. And it was super fun. He is hilarious. I had more fun with him. We were in the studio for about 5 hours together, and we did a 90-minute show. It was really great. He's a beautiful spirit. So that was fun.
Okay, I'm like, I was looking for wholehearted.org to put up, but you guys, wholehearted.org, you've got to go check out this. I saw the flyer for it, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to see that. Well, I didn't know it was released already, so I'm all excited about that. I'm going to definitely check that out. I have to. I'm going to tell you guys, listen, there is not much I can say that his program works. Okay, this is what I'm going to tell you. It works. My son, when a year ago, just a little bit over a year ago, was coming off heroin and a suicide attempt. And you know something? When he got a hold of Conscious Recovery and that book, the program wasn't even available yet. it impacted his life so drastically. And yes, he's still sober today. So all I have to say to you is, please give it a shot and see. Just see what happens for you in your life. Not only that, but it's relatively you and I have a price war going on about that. He's got it for some stupid price, I promise you. What is it again? It's like
it's $199 for the year, and it does take about 9 months to go through it. You go through it at your own pace, but it usually, if you're going to really take the information in, it can take you up to 9 months. So it is a lot of content. And yes, it's probably underpriced, but I also am really grateful to share that with people.
Just saying, look, $200 for the entire, yeah. Y'all just need to do it. And I've seen what happens with people that actually practice the conscious recovery method. My own son. I mean, I've seen it. Plus the fact that I've read through the book, and it's incredible. It's incredible. And if you're not about the course, go get the book. You can do that too. You can find it right on TJ's website. Okay?
Yes.
Go do it, because that's why. Hey, TJ, you have
Yes.
any last words for everybody?
My final words are this: regardless of what you've experienced in life, regardless of what has happened to you, regardless of what you perceived you've done, it is possible for you to recognize that underneath all of that that's happened, there is a place within you that is unharmable, that is unharmed. You have an essential truth, a true nature, your essential self. And life really is about recognizing that and returning to that place of wholeness. And as we return to that place of wholeness, we find ourselves living in a world with less judgment and more curiosity, less division and more compassion. And this is what I want for you. And I know if you're watching this, you have experienced that too. And it's possible for all of us every single day to choose to be more compassionate. And what if you're the one you've been waiting for? What if this isn't about a new teaching, a new book, a new course, even though Debbie just said to take mine? What if this is about just this moment right now, remembering who you really are and being that in the world? And as more and more of us do that, we are literally changing the emotional and spiritual climate of the planet every single moment, including this one.
Rock on. Absolutely. You know, think about it. If today were your last day, and this comes up for me a lot with all the people that have passed away in my life, and if, for those of you that have experienced this, you know what I'm talking about. What if for today that you just accept the fact you're perfectly great just the way that you are, and there's nothing wrong with you, and that maybe you were never broken? Get curious with yourself and see that you are a whole and perfect divine being, and that you are worthy and deserving of everything that you've ever desired within your heart. You're not lacking anything. So just, if you could just spend the rest of today, the rest of this evening, just being in joy with yourself. Just be in joy with yourself. And also challenge yourself to not be opinionated for just 1 hour.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. I have to. So, all right, everybody. Peace out. Go check out tjwoodward.com. We love you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.